The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with the voices of hundreds of different species. Ambassador Kethra of the Vorthan people stood at the center of the massive chamber, his ancient eyes scanning the crowd of delegates. The Vorthans were old, older than any other race in the galaxy. They had watched civilizations rise and fall for thousands of years. Kethra raised his hand, and the hall fell silent. His voice carried the weight of centuries as he spoke. Fellow beings of the galaxy, I come before you today with a warning. We have discovered a new species on the outer edges of our known space. They call themselves humans, and they come from a world they name Earth. A ripple of interest moved through the assembly. New species were always a topic of discussion. Some delegates leaned forward in their seats, curious about what made these humans special enough to warrant a formal warning. These humans, Kethra continued, are different from any species we have encountered before. They are young, having only recently developed space travel. But in our observations, we have seen something that concerns us greatly. They possess a unique combination of intelligence, adaptability, and controlled aggression that makes them extremely dangerous when threatened. General Vextar of the Zelkarian Empire stood up, his scaled face showing amusement. The Zelkarians were one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, with fleets that could crush entire star systems. You speak of a species that has barely left their homeworld, he said with a harsh laugh. What possible threat could such primitives pose to established powers like ourselves? The crystalline delegate from the ethereal collective made a sound, like breaking glass, which served as their laughter. The Vorthans see danger in shadows, the being said in its musical voice. These humans are nothing more than another minor species to be catalogued and forgotten. The reptilian ambassador from the Drakmori worlds hissed his agreement. If they become troublesome, they can be dealt with like any other pest, he said, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. Kethra's expression grew grave. You do not understand. We have studied their history, their development, their nature. Humans have spent their entire evolution learning to fight. Their world is harsh, and it has made them equally harsh. More importantly, they learn from every conflict and adapt faster than any species we have recorded. Enough of this nonsense, General Vextar declared. The Zelkarian Empire has conquered dozens of species. If these humans become a problem, we will solve it as we always do. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was clear. The assembled delegates dismissed the Vorthan warning as the paranoid concerns of an aging species. One by one, they voted to classify humans as a minor concern, not worthy of special attention or precautions. Meanwhile, millions of light years away on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his office reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Terran Defense Force had been tracking unusual movement near human space for weeks. Ships from multiple alien species were gathering in sectors close to human colonies. Lieutenant Amy Foster knocked on his door and entered with a data pad in her hands. She was young for an intelligence officer, but her work was always accurate and thorough. Captain, we've intercepted more communications from the alien fleets, she said, setting the pad on his desk. Jake picked up the device and scrolled through the translated messages. His face grew darker with each line he read. They're talking about human worlds like they're already theirs, he said quietly. Resources to be harvested, populations to be managed. It gets worse, sir, Amy said. Long-range sensors have detected fleet movements from at least 3 different species. The Zelkarians, the Drakmori, and something we haven't identified yet. They're all positioning themselves near our outer colonies. Jake set down the pad and looked out the window at the blue sky of Earth. Below, people went about their daily lives, unaware that alien eyes were watching them from the darkness of space. Have you briefed Admiral Kane on this? Yes, sir. She's calling an emergency meeting of the Defense Council for tomorrow morning. She wants you there to present the intelligence we've gathered. Jake nodded. The situation was developing faster than anyone had expected. When humans first made contact with alien civilizations 5 years ago, there had been hope for peaceful coexistence. That hope was fading quickly as it became clear that many alien species viewed humanity as nothing more than a convenient target. What About our colony ships? Jake asked. The new Eden transport was scheduled to arrive at their destination next week. Amy checked her notes. The Harmony is carrying 50,000 colonists to the new Eden system. Last communication was 3 days ago, reporting normal progress. They should be establishing their settlement right about now. Far from Earth, the colony ship Harmony drifted silently in space near the planet that was supposed to be humanity's newest home. But instead of the welcoming sight of an empty world ready for colonization, the colonists had found something else entirely. Zelkarian warships surrounded their vessel, weapons trained on the helpless transport. General Vextar himself had come to oversee this operation. He stood on the bridge of his flagship watching as his soldiers boarded the human ship. "Bring me their leader," he ordered his subordinates. Within minutes, Captain Maria Lopez of the Harmony was dragged before him, her hands bound behind her back. "Welcome to Zelkarian space, human," Vextar said with a cruel smile. "Your people have stumbled into territory that belongs to the Empire. Fortunately for you, we have use for your kind." Maria lifted her chin defiantly. "This system was unclaimed. We have the right to settle here under galactic law." Vextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Galactic law is whatever the strong decide it is. Your people will work the mines on this world. The crystals beneath its surface are valuable, and human hands are well suited for extraction work." "You can't do this," Maria protested. "When Earth finds out what happened here, they'll come for us." "Let them come," Vextar replied. "The Zelkarian Empire has crushed dozens of species who thought they could challenge us. Your humans will be no different." As the Zelkarian soldiers led the colonists away to begin their new lives as slaves, Vextar turned his attention to the vast crystal deposits that his sensors had detected beneath the planet's surface. The humans would prove useful after all, just not in the way they had planned. In the depths of space, the warning of the ancient Vorthans seemed to echo unheard among the stars. The galaxy had chosen not to listen, and now the first consequences of that decision were beginning to unfold. 3 months had passed since the colony ship Harmony disappeared without a trace. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, staring at the planet below through the main view screen. New Eden looked peaceful from orbit, but the readings his sensors were giving him told a different story. "Captain, we're detecting massive mining operations on the surface," reported Lieutenant Ryan Clark from the tactical station. "Energy signatures suggest industrial equipment far beyond what our colonists would have brought with them." Jake's jaw tightened. The search and rescue mission had taken weeks to organize, but Admiral Kane had finally authorized him to investigate what happened to the missing colonists. What he was seeing made his blood run cold. "Take us down to the main settlement site," he ordered, "and keep our weapons ready. I have a feeling we're not going to like what we find." The Defiance descended through the atmosphere, and soon, the truth became clear on their screens. Hundreds of humans in tattered clothes worked under the harsh sun, digging crystals from massive open pits. Zelkarian guards with energy weapons watched over them, while alien machinery hauled away the precious minerals. "Dear God," whispered Amy Foster, who had requested to join the mission. "They're using our people as slave labor." Jake's hands clenched into fists. "Signal the surface. I want to speak with whoever's in charge down there." The response came quickly. A Zelkarian officer appeared on their communication screen, his scaled face showing surprise at seeing a human warship. "This is Commander Kelth of the Zelkarian mining operation. You are trespassing in Imperial space. Leave immediately or face the consequences." "This is Captain Morrison of the Terran Defense Force," Jake replied, his voice deadly calm. "You are holding 50,000 human civilians against their will. Release them immediately or we will take them by force." The Zelkarian officer laughed. "One small human ship against the might of the Empire? You are even more foolish than we expected. This world and everything on it now belongs to the Zelkarian Empire." Jake cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. We're going to get our people back." "Sir," Ryan said from tactical, 3 Zelkarian patrol ships are rising from the surface. They're moving to intercept us." "Good," Jake said grimly. "It's time to show These aliens what humans do when our families are threatened. The battle that followed would later be studied in military academies across human space. The Zelkarian ships were larger and more heavily armed than the Defiance, but they had never fought humans before. They expected their enemy to follow conventional tactics, to engage at long range with careful maneuvering. Instead, Jake Morrison did something no Zelkarian commander had ever seen. He ordered a direct ramming attack on the lead enemy ship. "Sir, that's suicide," Ryan protested. "No," Jake replied. "That's human. Fire all weapons and ram that ship. Full power to forward shields." The Defiance screamed through space directly at the Zelkarian vessel. At the last second, Jake ordered the ship to roll, presenting their armored belly to the enemy while their weapons carved through the alien ship's hull. The collision sent both vessels spinning, but the human ship's reinforced construction held, while the Zelkarian ship exploded in a ball of fire. "Two ships remaining," Ryan reported, his voice filled with excitement. "They're trying to flank us." "Target their engines," Jake ordered. "We're not here to play games. Take them down hard." The remaining Zelkarian ships found themselves facing an enemy that fought like no other species they had encountered. Humans used suicide runs, psychological warfare, and tactics that bordered on insanity. When one Zelkarian captain tried to use human prisoners as shields, the humans targeted the ship anyway, willing to sacrifice their own people to ensure the aliens learned that such tactics would not work. Within an hour, all 3 Zelkarian ships were destroyed. The Defiance, heavily damaged but still functional, began landing operations to rescue the colonists. As transport shuttles ferried the survivors to safety, Jake watched the faces of the people they were saving. They were thin, exhausted, and scarred, but alive. Captain Maria Lopez was among the last to be brought aboard. She looked older than her years, marked by months of forced labor, but her eyes burned with an anger that Jake recognized all too well. "Captain Morrison," she said, as she stepped onto his bridge, "I need to report what happened here. The Zelkarians weren't just mining crystals. They were studying us, learning about human physiology and psychology. This wasn't random piracy. This was deliberate." Jake nodded grimly. "We'll debrief you fully once we're back to Earth. Right now, we need to get you and your people medical attention." As the Defiance left New Eden's orbit, carrying its precious cargo of rescued humans, news of the battle spread through both human and alien space. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Kane called an emergency session of the United Earth government. Her words to the assembled leaders were measured but carried an unmistakable edge. "The galaxy has made its position clear," she said, standing before the Global Council. "We are not considered equals in their eyes. We are prey to be hunted, resources to be exploited. It's time to show them exactly what prey with fangs can accomplish." In the Drakmori home system, war leader Skrath received reports of the human counterattack with interest rather than concern. The reptilian commander had been planning his own expansion into human space, and the Zelkarian failure only convinced him that they had been too cautious. "The humans fight well for primitives," he hissed to his subordinates, "but they only had one ship. We will bring 10,000. Skrath began issuing orders for the largest military mobilization in Drakmori history. Every available warship would be recalled from patrol duty. Every warrior would be prepared for battle. The Drakmori had built their civilization on conquest, and they saw the humans as simply another species to be added to their empire. Meanwhile, Colonel Ben Hayes led a covert mission deep into alien space. His team of Special Forces operatives had been tasked with gathering intelligence on the various species that seemed to be targeting humanity. What they discovered in a captured Drakmori database chilled him to the bone. The attacks on human space weren't random or opportunistic. They were part of a coordinated plan developed by multiple alien species. Detailed invasion routes had been planned for every major human world. Earth itself was marked for complete subjugation, its population to be enslaved or eliminated as the aliens saw fit. "Colonel," Sergeant Tony Mitchell said as he reviewed the captured data, "according to this, at least 6 different species are involved in this conspiracy. They're planning to divide human space between them like it's some kind of prize. Ben stared at the holographic display showing the planned invasion routes. Every human colony, every trade route, every defensive position had been carefully studied and catalogued by their enemies. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. "Get this information back to Earth immediately," he ordered. "Admiral Kane needs to see this. The entire human race needs to see this." As the intelligence made its way back to Earth, the rescued colonists from New Eden shared their own stories of alien cruelty and deliberate humiliation. The galaxy had not simply attacked humanity out of greed or territorial ambition. They had done it because they viewed humans as inferior beings who deserved no better treatment than livestock. That revelation would change everything. The anger that had been building in human space since the first attacks now crystallized into something far more dangerous. The aliens had awakened something in humanity that they didn't understand, something that the ancient Vorthons had tried to warn them about. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's history was written in blood and fire. The attack came without warning across 12 human worlds at exactly the same time. War leader Siskarath had coordinated his assault with surgical precision, using the element of surprise to maximize the destruction. 10,000 Drakmori ships emerged from hyperspace simultaneously, supported by Zelkarian reinforcements that had been hidden in nearby systems. On the industrial world of Titan's Rest, Commander Kate Sullivan watched the enemy fleet decloak on her sensors with cold calculation. She had been expecting this attack ever since the intelligence reports from Colonel Hayes had reached Earth. The aliens thought they were striking at helpless prey, but humanity had been preparing. "Enemy fleet detected," reported her tactical officer. "Drakmori configuration, roughly 800 ships. They're heading straight for the orbital platforms." Kate stood in the center of her command bridge, surrounded by displays showing the approaching doom. Titan's Rest was home to 15 million humans, most of them working in the massive industrial complexes that produced ships and weapons for the growing human fleet. The Drakmori weren't here for conquest, they were here for annihilation. "Signal all civilian transports to begin immediate evacuation," she ordered. "Then arm all defensive platforms and prepare to implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was something new in human military doctrine. It had been developed after studying the alien attacks on human colonies, and it represented a fundamental shift in how humans approached warfare. There would be no prisoners, no negotiations, and no mercy. "Ma'am," her communications officer said hesitantly, "the Drakmori commander is demanding our surrender. He's threatening to use human civilians as shields if we resist." Kate's expression didn't change. "Tell him that using human civilians as shields is a mistake that his species will regret for generations. Then target every ship in his formation and prepare to fire." The battle for Titan's Rest became a legend told throughout human space. When the Drakmori tried to position their ships near the civilian orbital platforms, expecting the humans to hold their fire, Kate Sullivan proved them wrong. She ordered the destruction of Platform 7, accepting the loss of 30,000 human lives to eliminate the enemy ships hiding behind it. The psychological impact on the Drakmori was immediate and devastating. They had never encountered an enemy willing to sacrifice their own people to achieve victory. The aliens hesitated, confused by human ruthlessness, and in that moment of uncertainty, the human defenders struck with overwhelming force. On the agricultural world of Haven, Major Chris Thompson faced a different kind of battle. The Drakmori had landed ground forces and were trying to capture the grain production facilities intact. Chris had other plans. "Burn it all," he ordered his engineers as alien dropships filled the sky. "Every grain silo, every processing plant, every warehouse. If we can't have it, neither can they." The Drakmori ground forces expected to face desperate but ultimately futile resistance. Instead, they found themselves in a nightmare of booby traps, poisoned water supplies, and civilians who fought with the fury of cornered animals. Every city became a death trap. Every farm became a fortress. Every human they encountered seemed willing to die rather than surrender. Major Thompson used tactics that would have horrified previous generations of human military officers. When Drakmori forces tried to use human prisoners to negotiate safe passage, he ordered artillery strikes on the alien positions regardless of human casualties. When the aliens established a command post in a captured hospital, he brought the entire building down with everyone inside. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "Drakmori Command is requesting a ceasefire to discuss terms." Chris wiped alien blood from his combat knife and looked out at the burning city that had once been Haven's capital. "Tell them the only terms we're interested in discussing are the manner of their death." The breakthrough that changed everything came from Dr. Elena Rodriguez on Earth. She had been studying captured alien technology for months, looking for weaknesses that could be exploited. What she found was better than she had hoped. All alien shield systems use the same basic harmonic frequency, she explained to Admiral Kane via secure transmission. If we can modify our weapons to disrupt that frequency, their shields become useless. "How long to implement this?" Kane asked. "With our current manufacturing capabilities, we can have new weapons deployed to all human ships within 2 weeks, Elena replied. "But there's more. I've also developed a way to manufacture these weapons faster than anything we've ever built before. We can outproduce the entire alien alliance combined." Admiral Kane smiled for the first time since the war began. "Doctor, you may have just won this war for us." Operation Prometheus launched 2 weeks later with devastating effect. Human ships, equipped with the new shield-disrupting weapons, emerged from hyperspace throughout alien territory, striking at military installations, supply depots, and communication centers. The aliens, who had grown comfortable behind their supposedly impenetrable shields, found themselves defenseless against human firepower. Captain Jake Morrison, now commanding the new flagship UES Retribution, led the assault on the Drakmori staging area. The battle was over almost before it began. Drakmori shields collapsed under the new human weapons, and their ships were torn apart by conventional firepower that should never have been able to touch them. "Drakmori fleet is retreating," reported Ryan Clark, who had been promoted to Morrison's tactical officer. "Should we pursue?" Jake watched the alien ships flee in panic on his main screen. "Oh yes, Lieutenant, we're going to follow them all the way home. It's time the galaxy learned what happens when you mistake human mercy for human weakness." The EB counterattack that followed shattered 2 major alien civilizations in a matter of months. Human forces didn't bother with conquest or occupation. They simply destroyed everything military they could find and left the aliens to contemplate their mistakes in the ruins of their former power. On the Zelkarian homeworld, General Vextar watched his once mighty empire crumble as human ships appeared, in system after system, destroying his fleets with casual efficiency. The species that he had dismissed as primitive were proving to be the most dangerous enemy the Zelkarians had ever faced. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his advisors. "They're using our own technology against us, improved beyond anything we thought possible." "Sir," his intelligence chief reported, "human industrial output has increased by 3,000% since the war began. They're building ships faster than we can destroy them, and their weapons technology is advancing at an impossible rate." Vextar realized with growing horror that the Zelkarians had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had judged humans by their current technology level, not by their potential for advancement. The species that had seemed so primitive was actually the most adaptable enemy they had ever encountered. In the depths of space, far from the battles raging across the galaxy, Ambassador Kethra of the Vorthans received reports of the human counter-offensive with a mixture of sadness and resignation. His people had tried to warn the galaxy, but their words had fallen on deaf ears. "It is as we feared," he said to his fellow Vorthans. "The humans are everything we predicted they would be. The galaxy chose not to listen to our warning, and now they face the consequences." The elder Vorthan nodded slowly. "Perhaps it is better this way. The galaxy has grown complacent, ruled by species who believe that might alone makes right. The humans will teach them that there are always bigger predators in the darkness." As human forces pressed deeper into alien space, the nature of the war began to change. This was no longer about defending human colonies or rescuing human prisoners. This had become something far more fundamental. A demonstration to the galaxy that humanity would not be threatened, enslaved, or exterminated by anyone. The ancient warning of the Vorthons was finally being proven correct. But the lesson was being written in fire and blood across a dozen star systems. The galaxy was learning the hard way that some sleeping giants should never be awakened. The war had entered a new phase, one that terrified the galaxy. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were hunting their enemies with methodical precision that chilled even neutral species to the bone. What had begun as defensive actions had evolved into something far more sinister. A systematic campaign of annihilation. General Alex Turner commanded the human offensive into Drakmori space from his mobile command ship, the UES Vengeance. His strategy was simple and brutal. Rather than attempting to hold territory, human forces would strike at infrastructure, eliminate military capability, and disappear before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Target acquired, reported Captain Lisa Carter from the destroyer UES Raptor. Drakmori supply depot heavily defended, approximately 200 enemy ships in the area. Execute Alpha Protocol, Turner ordered without hesitation. Complete destruction, no survivors. The Alpha Protocol was humanity's answer to alien aggression. It involved the complete elimination of enemy military assets using overwhelming firepower and tactics that bordered on the insane. Human ships would attack in coordinated waves, accepting massive casualties to ensure that no enemy vessel escaped to report their capabilities. The Drakmori had never encountered anything like it. Their military doctrine was based on honorable combat, individual prowess, and the gradual wearing down of enemy forces. Humans fought like a plague, consuming everything in their path and leaving nothing but death behind them. War leader Skrath watched from his flagship as yet another Drakmori base was obliterated by human forces. His mighty invasion fleet, once 10,000 ships strong, had been reduced to fewer than 300 vessels. Worse, the humans seemed to know exactly where his remaining forces were at all times. "How do they find us so easily?" he hissed to his subordinates. "We change positions constantly, use every stealth technique known to our people, yet they appear wherever we go." His intelligence officer, a young Drakmori named Kestar, approached with disturbing news. "War leader, our communications have been compromised. The humans aren't just intercepting our transmissions, they're rewriting them. They've been feeding us false orders for weeks." The realization hit Skrath like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just defeated the Drakmori military. They had turned the Drakmori communication network into a weapon against its own people. Every order he thought he was receiving from high command had actually been crafted by human intelligence. The Zelkarian front, Admiral Sarah Kim was employing psychological warfare on a scale never before seen in galactic history. Her forces had taken to broadcasting messages directly into Zelkarian civilian population centers, showing footage of their defeated fleets accompanied by simple demands. "Citizens of the Zelkarian Empire," her voice echoed through alien communication networks. "Your military attacked peaceful human colonies without provocation. Your leaders chose to enslave our people rather than seek peaceful coexistence. Return our surviving prisoners. Withdraw from human space, and perhaps your species will survive what comes next." The broadcasts were accompanied by detailed footage of Zelkarian ships being torn apart by human weapons. The psychological impact was devastating. Zelkarian civilian populations began demanding that their government end the war before humanity decided to visit their worlds in person. When the Zelkarian Council refused to negotiate, Admiral Kim demonstrated humanity's commitment to total victory. The outer Zelkarian colonies simply disappeared. Human forces would arrive, evacuate any non-military personnel who wished to leave, and then systematically destroy every piece of infrastructure on the planet. The message was clear: cooperate or watch your civilization burn. Meanwhile, Ambassador Victoria Wells addressed the Galactic Council in what would become known as the most terrifying diplomatic speech in galactic history. She stood before the assembled representatives of hundreds of species, her words carrying the weight of humanity's newfound power. "You were warned about humanity," she began, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "The ancient Vorthons tried to tell you what we were capable of, but you chose to ignore their wisdom. You initiated hostilities against peaceful human colonies, enslaved our people, and planned the complete conquest of human space. The hall was silent as she continued. Now you face the consequences of awakening a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of warfare. We did not seek this conflict, but we will finish it on our terms. Victoria gestured to the holographic displays that showed the current state of the war. The Drakmori Empire, once spanning 47 systems, now controls 3. The Zelkarian military, which numbered over 50,000 ships, has been reduced to scattered remnants hiding in the outer darkness. This is what happens when you mistake human restraint for human weakness. Captain Tony Mitchell, leading a deep strike mission into the heart of Zelkarian space, discovered something that changed the entire nature of the conflict. His team had captured a high-ranking Zelkarian intelligence officer, and the interrogation revealed a conspiracy that reached far beyond simple territorial expansion. "Captain," Sergeant Dan Murphy reported, "according to these files, the attacks on human space weren't random. At least 8 different species coordinated this operation. They call it the Human Solution, a systematic plan to eliminate humanity before we could develop into a threat to galactic stability." Tony stared at the captured data in disbelief. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Species that had never shown any interest in human space had contributed ships, intelligence, and resources to what was essentially a planned genocide. "Get this information back to Earth immediately," he ordered. "The entire human race needs to know that this wasn't just about territorial expansion. They were trying to exterminate us." The revelation triggered something unprecedented in human history: absolute unity. Every nation on Earth, every corporation, every political faction put aside their differences to focus on a single goal. The survival of humanity now depended on making the cost of threatening them so high that no species would ever dare try again. President Robert Nash addressed the people of Earth in a broadcast that was simultaneously transmitted to every human colony. "My fellow humans," he said, "we now know that what we face is not merely aggression or conquest. Our enemies sought our complete extermination. They viewed us as a threat to be eliminated before we could grow strong enough to defend ourselves. They made one critical error," he continued, his voice growing harder. "They assumed that by striking first they could prevent us from becoming what we truly are. Instead, they have awakened humanity's full potential. We will not merely survive this conflict. We will emerge as the dominant force in the galaxy, and no species will ever again mistake our desire for peace as a sign of weakness." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now head of human military research, worked around the clock to develop new technologies that would ensure humanity's supremacy. Her latest creation was a weapon that could disrupt the gravitational fields that held alien planets in stable orbits. It was the ultimate deterrent. Surrender or watch your homeworld spin into the void. "We won't have to use it," she explained to Admiral Kane during a secure briefing. "The mere existence of such a weapon will force our enemies to reconsider their position. No species can survive the loss of their homeworld." The final phase of the human counteroffensive began with simultaneous assaults on both the Drakmori and Zelkarian homeworlds. The attacks were not intended as conquest but as demonstration. Humanity wanted the galaxy to understand that no world, no matter how well defended, was beyond their reach. As human fleets appeared in the skies above, worlds that had never known the fear of invasion, panic spread through the remaining alien resistance. The species that had dismissed humans as primitive prey now faced the terrifying reality that they had become the hunted. The ancient Vorthan warning, ignored for so long, finally echoed through the galaxy with perfect clarity. But for many species, the lesson was coming too late. They had awakened something in humanity that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The age of human dominance was about to begin, written in the ashes of civilizations that had chosen to ignore wisdom when it was freely offered. The war ended not with humanity's defeat, but with the complete surrender of their enemies. The Drakmori homeworld lay in ruins, its military infrastructure systematically destroyed by human forces that had shown no mercy. General Skrath, once The proud leader of a vast invasion fleet, knelt before human officers in the wreckage of his command center, begging for a mercy that would never come. "Please," he hissed through broken teeth, "spare what remains of my people. We surrender unconditionally." "Admiral." Kane stood over the defeated alien commander, her expression as cold as the void between stars. Behind her, the UES Retribution's main guns continued to target the remaining Drakmori military installations. There would be no negotiated peace, no gradual withdrawal. The species that had planned humanity's extermination would learn the true cost of their ambition. "Your people chose this path," she said quietly. "You dismissed the warnings, enslaved our civilians, and planned our genocide. Surrender was an option 3 months ago. Now you face the consequences." The bombardment continued for another 6 hours until every military installation, every weapons factory, and every starship construction facility on the Drakmori homeworld had been reduced to radioactive slag. When it was over, the once mighty Drakmori military no longer existed as a functional force. But the true shock came when humanity stopped. As Drakmori leaders prepared for the complete destruction of their civilization, human forces simply withdrew to orbital positions and began broadcasting new terms to the surviving population. Commander Nathan Price, now leading the post-war occupation forces, addressed the defeated Drakmori from the bridge of his command ship. "Citizens of the former Drakmori Empire," his voice echoed through their communication networks, "your military leadership has been removed from power. Your warships have been destroyed. Your weapons of mass destruction no longer exist. However," he continued, "humanity has no interest in ruling your people. We will restructure your society to ensure it never again threatens peaceful species. But we do not seek to govern you. You will govern yourselves, under new rules that we will establish." The Terran Peace, as it came to be known, was unlike any occupation in galactic history. Human forces didn't attempt to rule the defeated species directly. Instead, they dismantled everything that had made them aggressive. Military castes were disbanded and forbidden from reforming. Weapons manufacturing was limited to defensive systems only. Most importantly, aggressive expansion was absolutely prohibited. New governments were installed with strict oversight from human observers. These governments had the power to rule their own people, but they had no authority to threaten others. Any violation of the Terran peace would result in immediate intervention by human forces. The Zelkarian Empire faced a similar fate. Emperor Vextar, once the most powerful being in Zelkarian space, found himself addressing his former subjects from a prison cell as human forces dismantled his empire piece by piece. "The Imperial Navy is defeated," he announced in a broadcast that was transmitted throughout former Zelkarian space. "Our capital ships are destroyed, our military bases are under human control, and our dreams of conquest are ended forever. But the humans offer us something our empire never offered others," he continued, his voice heavy with the weight of defeat. "They offer us the chance to rebuild as a peaceful civilization. The choice is ours: accept their terms and survive, or face complete annihilation." Most Zelkarian worlds chose survival. The empire that had once controlled dozens of star systems fragmented into independent worlds, each governed by human-approved local authorities. The species that had enslaved human colonists now worked under human supervision to rebuild their shattered civilization according to human standards. In the ancient halls of the Vorthan homeworld, Ambassador Kethra requested a private meeting with human leadership. The old alien stood before Captain Morrison, now bearing the scars of 2 years of total war, and spoke words that carried the weight of centuries. "I must apologize for my people's failure," Kethra said, his ancient eyes showing genuine remorse. "We saw what humanity could become, but we did not do enough to prevent this conflict. Perhaps if we had been more forceful in our warnings." Morrison, his face marked by the terrible things he had seen and done, shook his head slowly. "You warned them, Ambassador. That's all anyone can do. The galaxy chose not to listen to wisdom when it was offered freely. Sometimes lessons can only be learned through pain." The conversation marked a turning point in human-Vorthan relations. The ancient species, recognizing humanity's new position as the galaxy's dominant power, offered their vast knowledge and experience to help guide human expansion. It was an alliance built on mutual respect rather than fear. The most significant development came with the establishment of the Terran Protectorate. Dr. Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's Chief Technology Officer, announced a new policy that would reshape galactic politics forever. Any species that has been victim to aggressive expansion by others may request protection under the Terran Protectorate, she declared before the reformed Galactic Council. In exchange for mutual defense agreements, these species will have access to human technology, human protection, and human assistance in developing their own defensive capabilities. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of smaller species that had lived in fear of their more powerful neighbors rushed to sign protection agreements with humanity. The Terran Protectorate grew from a handful of worlds to a network, spanning hundreds of systems in a matter of months. Human technology, once jealously guarded by Earth's military, began flowing to allied species. Advanced manufacturing techniques, medical technologies, and defensive weapons systems were shared freely with any species willing to commit to peaceful coexistence. The galaxy's power structure had been completely inverted. The species that had once ruled through military might found themselves increasingly isolated, while those who embraced the Terran peace prospered under human protection. 5 years after the war's end, a new crisis emerged that would test humanity's resolve once again. Long-range scouts reported the discovery of a previously unknown species on the galactic rim. The Kethmori were aggressive, expansionist, and had begun attacking smaller species in their region of space. In the relocated Galactic Council chambers on Earth, the debate was brief and decisive. Ambassador Wells stood before the assembled representatives of 300 species and delivered humanity's new doctrine with quiet authority. "The galaxy has learned the price of unprovoked aggression," she said, her words carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "This new species will learn the same lesson, or they will be taught it in the manner that their predecessors discovered was most effective. We did not seek to become the galaxy's guardians," she continued, "but the universe has made that choice for us. Any species that threatens peaceful civilizations will face the full might of the Terran Protectorate. This is not a threat. It is a promise." The camera pulled back to show Earth, no longer the isolated blue marble it had once been. Massive orbital shipyards surrounded the planet, constructing vessels that incorporated technology from dozens of allied species. The home of humanity had become the beating heart of a new galactic order. In the depths of space, automated beacons transmitted the same message in thousands of languages. "You are entering space protected by the Terran Protectorate. Peaceful, travelers are welcome. Aggressive acts will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Choose wisely." The ancient Vorthon warning had become galactic law, enforced by a species that had proven beyond doubt that they were everything their old allies had predicted they would be. The galaxy would never forget the price of awakening humanity's wrath, and no species would ever again mistake human mercy for human weakness. The age of human dominance had begun, built on the foundation of shattered empires and written in the ashes of civilizations that had chosen to ignore wisdom when it was freely offered. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and humanity would ensure it was never forgotten.